This video is about the broken glasses and the missing lens in the David Bain murder trials. The police case was this. They accept that at the time of the murders there was clear proof that David Bain's normal glasses were getting professionally repaired. When they arrived at the murder scene, they found a glasses frame with no lenses in it and one lens on a chair beside the glasses with one missing lens. The police say these glasses were David Bain's. 4 days later, Detective Milton Ware finds the missing lens in David's brother Stephen's room, where Stephen had a vigorous fight with the murderer. Detective Sergeant Milton Ware says in his pre-trial deposition statement that the missing lens had been found under items including an ice skate boot and a folded raincoat, which were in turn under a set of bunks. He said he did not find the lens until he removed other items. Detective Sergeant Milton Ware also got a statement of ophthalmologist Dr. Gordon Sanderson, who was an eye doctor for both David and Margaret, saying that the glasses were David Bain's, despite David Bain saying that the glasses were his mother Margaret's glasses. No problem so far with Detective Sergeant Milton Ware's evidence. But then ophthalmologist Dr. Gordon Sanderson, who was the eye doctor to both David and Margaret Bain, sees a picture of David's mother Margaret wearing the glasses that he had given evidence were David's, and so he asked Detective Sergeant Milton Ware to amend his evidence in accordance with his new understanding that the glasses were in fact Margaret's. When Dr. Gordon Sanderson read Joe Karam's first book, David and Goliath, after the first trial, he made contact with Joe Karam and he swore a new affidavit, also mentioning that Detective Sergeant Milton Ware had said to him that there was a lot of dust around the lens, but we'll just ignore that. He also swore an affidavit that Detective Sergeant Milton Ware had knowingly allowed him to give misleading evidence. Obviously, it's not very convenient for the prosecution case if a lens that was worn recently is covered in months of dust. Detective Sergeant Milton Ware says the photograph of Margaret wearing the glasses was passed on to the Crown Prosecutor Bill Wright, but that he had a stance on it, suggesting the Crown Prosecutor Bill Wright wanted to keep this quiet. And they may well have been in this cover-up together, because the Crown Prosecutor Bill Wright had emphasised to the jury that David Bain's evidence was at odds with their own expert witness, Dr. Gordon Sanderson. Although we know now that Dr. Gordon Sanderson's amended evidence was completely consistent with David Bain's assertion that the glasses were his mother's, and that had the right evidence been presented, it could have been a very embarrassing reversal for these two. Finally, and what looks to be the most blatant perjury of the case by Detective Sergeant Milton Ware is his later evidence about where he found the missing lens only inches from Stephen's body, and that this missing lens, only inches from the body, was somehow missed in the first 4 days of a scrupulous scene examination. Perhaps even more alarming was that Prosecutor Bill Wright's notes, along with Detectives Jim Doyle and Detective Sergeant Milton Ware's notes, all say the lens was found on top of, not under items, and yet this is in clear contradiction to Detective Ware's initial court evidence, the deposition evidence. So it appears all three rehearsed this new embellishment perjury about finding the lens in a more convenient open space closer to the struggle, without notifying the defence of a fundamental change in their evidence so as to stun them into accepting it. Just when does a trial judge, confronted with embarrassing and blatant police perjury, order a prosecution of that officer to take place? Because there has been much of this type of evidence given in the David Bain murder trial, and it's blatant, and it tars reputations, and it muddies the waters, and it takes up court time, and it confuses juries. And then they embellish this false evidence to add even more to it, so there has to be a line drawn in the sand for foul evidence. In sport, when there are serious breaches of protocol, quite often a medal has to be returned. So it should be with trials. When the police evidence has totally lost credibility, They have to be put on trial. The accused has to be freed and compensated.